You can't handle the truth? Or is it you can't handle the truth? We're going to find out here very shortly on Sportswire Radio because our guest is going to have a lot to talk about here. Undoubtedly, not only when it comes to the CWO, but also Saturdays, CCWs, Coloring Championship Wrestling, Fight or Strike 2, and it's yet another sellout. I mean, I lost count literally on how many sellouts in a row, and he's going to talk about his journey. He even does some of this here. So we'll see, hopefully, if I pass his grades, and we'll see much, much more about him. So, with that, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report. Number one, Global Sports Show. He is the man that talks the truth. Will the truth hurt? Will it hurt? We'll find out. His name is Taylor Truth. My friend, how are you?
Absolutely fantastic, and I'm honoured to be here, Tom. So thank you very, very much for having us on.
My pleasure. Obviously, it's certainly been something that we've wanted to get you on for a very, very long time here on Sportswire Radio. I mean, we've been covering CCW now for, I want to say, about 8 or 9 months, and we always love speaking what the guys do, and you as well, and everybody else that's working on the company. But, I mean, there is a lot to get into here, and I want to get into the CWO in a second. I want to get into all that good stuff when it comes to Saturday's card. But I got to ask you, I mean, how does your voice hold up when you do a 3 or 4 hour show with our CCW shows when it comes to ring announcing? Because you do all the introductions and all that jazz. So, I mean, I do it just one time. You got to do it for at least 7 or 8 different matches. So, I mean, how do you pull it off?
It's very hard. I mean, at the beginning, the first show I did, literally second match in, microphones hadn't worked. Voice was ruined, and I thought, what on earth have I got myself in for here? I find that plenty water, tea, and like cough sweets gets us through. But sometimes I get so excited by the matches that I'm announcing, and I take so much passion in what I'm doing that I blow vocal cords way earlier than I should. You have like mid-card matches getting the announcement of the main event, and the whole thing just goes well. Because the CCW audience they do this thing to you where you're just absolutely wild.
Yeah, no, the CCW audience, the fan base of CCW literally is like no other. And I want to give a shout out to somebody else who does their own shows. That's the gentleman thug, Ronnie Thatcher. You can catch now with Carnage Championship Wrestling. He's basically the man behind that. He's also the champion there. And he says, good evening, lads. So certainly excited to have the gentleman thug. I'll definitely get into him as well. So yeah, I was just curious because I always ask that question to Ethan Edwards, who's obviously the co-general manager in Odyssey Pro Wrestling and ALP, and also I had asked him those same questions. And also, I have here a comment from somebody else before I ask you about CCW. Says, oh, hello, Mr. Truth, Mr. Deerstalker. Let's see what rubbish he can come up with. The Don is listening closely. And then the Reverend and the Deerstalker. So interesting that you might be the Deerstalker. But you know what? I'm going to go right off the bat here because this individual, I believe, is referring to the Don might be listening out there, and the Don refers to one of the last interviews I did in 2022 in Sportswire Radio, one of the more memorable ones. And I have to say, they are one of my favorite teams at the moment because I've covered them when they were in GT Ministries, and that is the Modern Day Mafia, who are going to be a part of a really, really big match also next week at the Tommy Dillon charity show, Wrestling for Kirkwood. And I mean, so what's your thoughts then maybe on the Modern Day Mafias? They seem to be gunning for your brethren, for now, the current CCW Tag Team Champions, the Rockstar Rob Bagwell and Dustin Hart.
Well, I'll start off by addressing this comment from this absolute lunatic. This guy dresses incredibly bad, the Don, as he calls himself, and he had the audacity to interrupt me at a live show at CCW, and the fans just booed him off the planet. And then I gave him a few stern words and threw him out of my ring. The modern day mafia need to join the back of the queue. Quite simply, there's a lot of people in front of them. They've turned up sporadically. They've caused a bit of chaos and then disappeared for a bit. But if the modern day mafia want a shot at the titles, they're going to have to go right back to the end of the queue with their little ticket.
Okay, I mean, certainly, I would also have to say the Diamond Exchange, Walker Wall Street, and Tommy Diamond, they might have something to say about that because they're going to be facing, of course, Dustin and Rob coming up here. I do have a bunch of comments. Let me try to get to everybody before I come back to that first. Evening, fellas, from Callaghan Riley. Want to give him a big shout out. Good evening, Taylor. So also a big shout out here from Zoe Spencer. Also, good evening to me as well. I appreciate that. I could definitely use that. Colin McGregor, we know Colin very well because we've had him a couple times on Sportswire. I know you're going to have some things to say about him as well. He says, evening, Tom, and to you as well. Last night's guest, Mr. Sportswire himself, the lawman, Kyle Kennedy, who we kind of know sort of in CCW, says, good evening, gentlemen. And, of course, our champion, who is also a part of the CWO, the Underground Heavyweight Champion. That is Hybrid, who's going to be in action against Mad Max Cooper, the former champion, in the main event coming up here. Fighter Strike 2 says the Reverend and the Deerstalker. And also somebody else, by the way, who was on Tuesday, who's going to be a part of CCW. I don't know what you know about him. He is the Cult of Killjoy. His name is Dan Robertson. And you said my name right, but please call me Cason Riley. Cason Riley, by the way, Cason Riley is the guy that disposed of young Horace to have a crack at the Genesis Championship in UKW. So we'll make sure that we speak with Cason and get his side of the story one of these days on Sportswire Radio. And yeah, this is the interview that everyone's been waiting. But, let's talk about the tag team championship situation. I'll get to some of these other guys like Dan Robertson, Kyle Kennedy. I'll get your thoughts on some of the new guys that are coming up to CCW very soon. But, I mean, tag team championship, this is a rematch. This is the first of two championship matches that are a rematch. And, I mean, try to give us the rundown for those that might be watching and listening that or maybe don't know who they're going to pick or maybe what's their kind of making a decision on if they're going to come out and who they may favor and what can we expect in the rematch for the CCW Tag Team Championships between the Diamond Exchange and the current champions from the CWO, Dustin Hart and Rockstar Rob Bagwell.
Well, what you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is the CWO undoubtedly doing what they've done since the very beginning. Unfortunately, they didn't have a good start. We didn't have a good run. We didn't pick up anything of any gold. But now that we've firmly got it within our grasp, they're going to have to kill them to take it off them. And I guarantee you, Rob and Dustin will not go down without a fight. And I'll be at ringside, hammering that canvas and screaming and shouting until the job gets done. And the Diamond Exchange, I mean, when we're finished with them, they're going to be nothing but dust.
I will say, though, I've seen them in other places, and they've represented CCW very well in the past. I will say, listen, not trying to pick sides, and obviously very impressed with Dustin, and we've had Dustin on a couple of times, but they're definitely worthy challengers, and they were very, very worthy champions as well here in CCW, I would say.
Worthy, absolutely, but not worthy of championship gold. They don't hold it well. They don't represent it well. I mean, they took it to GT and Ministries. Fair enough. Yeah.
That's where I saw them. We do a lot of GT Ministries coverage. Yep.
They did a great job down there. However, now that the gold is with the rightful owners, those who will represent it with glory and passion and righteousness, then that's where it'll stay.
All right, let me get to a couple more comments because I have a follow-up, which is going to kind of tie a bit into the modern-day Mafia. Colin McGregor says Diamond Exchange to be the two-time tag team champions by the end of the night. Well, we'll find out. He also wants to say sold out on Saturday, over 200. I understand, which is amazing. You think about a show to have over 200 people sold out. That is a big, big deal. I mean, listen, bands that are well-established bands can't get 200 people to show up at a show. And CCW does it like it's almost like water. They just do it no problem. And I want to give a big happy belated birthday to Dave Douglas from the Modern Day Mafia. And I want to come back to the Modern Day Mafia. And here's how I'm going to tie that to it. And I'll get to some more comments in a second. But doesn't this work to the advantage of the Modern Day Mafia? You say that, hey, they got to get in the back of the line for the tag team titles, but there's no question that the Diamond Exchange and the CWO are going to beat the hell out of each other on Saturday, right? And whoever walks away with these tag team titles on Saturday is going to be wounded. They're going to be damaged. So at the end of the day, I mean, if I'm the Modern Day Mafia, I mean, you got to be feeling really good because you basically disposed of the working class militia who dominated, I would say, for the most part of 2022 in CCW, especially with those tag team championships. And I mean, you would automatically, though, have to be at the front of the line and going into it here for the future 2023, especially with their size of Joel Cobra and Dave Douglas. I mean, I actually think they are the front of the line, and whoever walks away with these titles, I mean, it's going to be a tenuous grip at best, some might say.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, look, I don't do what the Diamond Exchange do, and I don't say that people stand no chance. That's not what I'm saying. What I was saying was, if the modern day Mafia want to go at the titles, then prove that they're capable of fighting in the big league. Yes, they defeated the working class militia, but let's face it, they beat a working class militia that, unbeknown to anybody else, was about to crack into two halves. So the performance of the working class militia may be under question because actually, were they really coexisting as a team in there? Was DB Grayson, DB, not DB, well, DB Riley as he was, but Riley, yeah. Grayson really as he is now, was he really in that for the long haul? Well, you'll never know. It's a question we haven't had answered yet because he won't speak about it. And he'll speak when he wants to speak, allegedly. But the CWO in that match took on not one team, but two others as well. And a caliber from Europe came across from Malta, Pro Wrestling Malta. They were involved in that match, and the CWO still came out on top. So all I'll say is the modern day Mafia, back of the queue, work your way through the ranks, and then if and when the time comes and the time is right, we'll lay them out as well.
Okay, I mean, certainly, I am sure that Uncle Ralph and the Don and the Mafia themselves will certainly be listening, and they'll also be in action next week as well at the Tommy Dillon charity show. It'll be Mafia versus Mafia, the Playtime Mafia, who we've seen in places like UKW, Nonstop Action Wrestling, and several other places. It'll be wrestling against the modern day Mafia. And I have a question which I want to throw. I want to jump this at the back of the line. I'll come back to some of this talk in a second. But I have an interesting question because I feel like, Taylor, when it comes to CCW, over the past several weeks on Sportswire Radio, I've had several wrestlers talk about coming into CCW or defending championships, and I'm sure Mr. Hybrid himself might want to hear this, but this is from Cason Riley here, and he says, apart from your own company, what championship would you want in any indie company? So I don't know if this means maybe to other companies locally, whether it's UKW, whether it's GT Ministries, whether it's you name them, Nonstop Action Wrestling. I mean, listen, there's the LWF and KOW. I don't know what company specifically or title, but, what championship would you want in any company aside from your own?
Probably the GT Ministries Championship. If the opportunity was given to take part in the show there, then absolutely, that's where it would be. I've been to their show twice now, and both times it's opened the doors to watching other talent. Obviously, we've had people appear in the CCW who are related to that promotion, and it was just such a fantastic environment to be in. The crowd were geared up, and it's funny because I'll answer the main question, but the main part I want to make reference to is the fans make this what it is. It doesn't matter where you go. If the fans don't get it, it's never going to work. In CCW, a lot like GT Ministries, the fan group are there for a common reason. So whether it be their faith, their spiritualism, or whether it be the locality and where they live and the heritage of the mining community that CCW is related to, it all forms part of the same thing. So to be able to passionately be involved in a match at GT Ministries, I think would probably be anybody's dream who sees what they're doing there, and it's really good stuff comes out of GT Ministries.
Absolutely, and we've seen GT Ministries and CCW work together, and I almost have to throw it out there because you did mention the GT Ministries Championship, and I'm sure you may or may not be aware of that their current champion is Disciple, and he just disposed of Bentley last week, and he's also the man that took out Gareth Angel, and we haven't seen Gareth Angel since, and he's also the guy that holds the Nonstop Action Wrestling World Class Championship. And I mean, would that be, let's say, somebody that you think, let's say, the current champion at the moment, Hybrid, is maybe he's worthy to compete against our current underground heavyweight champion? You think that's something that would a lot of people might want to see, and promoters, before I get to a comment related to places like GT Ministries?
Absolutely, I think Hybrid would match that. I mean, Disciple I've watched in action. I've seen his stuff online, and he, at this sport, at what he's good at, there's no touching what he can do. Hybrid, equivalent for CCW. People might say that he took an opportunity to get what he's got, and he hasn't really worked hard to get it.
I'm going to get to that. Yep.
However, that being said, it doesn't make any difference because intelligence is sometimes better than brawn strength in this game.
Okay, well, I mean, I would just say Spinebuster versus the Spear. That would certainly be interesting. But let me come back, because GT Ministries management is here in the house. So let me get to a couple comments here. We hear you, and this is for you, Mr. Taylor. Who from GTM would you like to see jump to CCW next?
It has to be Rarebit.
Oh, the new Rarebit now is interesting, because Rarebit's kind of lurking also in the GT Ministries championship picture, because he's basically the guy at any time. We saw this kind of play out here in the main event, where it looked like, was Rarebit going to cash in there, and then he kind of just had hold up. And Rarebit we've seen also in Bolton Town. He was the former Bolton Town Wrestling World Champion. So that's an interesting pick there. I would have thought you would have went right to the top for Disciple, because he's the current champion.
But I think, probably you're right, because of the gold that he holds. However, for me, I always view this through a fan's eyes. And if I was looking to make a statement, I would pick somebody like Rabbit, because he's an out of the box character. He's fantastic at what he does. And the first time I seen him on the GT, had this great screen above the ring, and it showed him. And so that picture was one thing of him. And then when he came out, I thought, oh my God, like I almost had the same reaction when I first seen Kane. He's got
a little bit of that. You don't know, like, is he human? Is he not human?
Yeah.
He's got that hellfire and brimstone with the mask. He's got the mask on. He's a totally different person almost.
Yeah. It's like I say, he had me speechless.
And he's such an unknown person, because you think about it, between GT Ministries and CCW over the past, we've been working with GT Ministries for a year, and you guys, I would say about like 9 or 10 months, we've never had him on, because it's almost like unknown. I mean, is he going to come out from the box and try to choke me out, or is he going to kill everybody? And we just don't know with him. I mean, and we're kind of seeing that now, because he's got a little bit of a new look, and he's trying to, I guess, almost be human, at least in GT Ministries. And I do have a couple of more comments that's kind of poked at the bear a little bit here. And CCW and GT Ministries are both like big, massive families in a fan capacity. That's how I see it from being both. I would definitely agree that of the two companies that we cover on Sportswire, I personally think, in terms of fan bases, they're 1 and 2, whether it's 1A, 1B, Co. I think that they're obviously a little bit of different styles technically, but I think that when I think about GT Ministries and CCW, those are the two companies that I really do think probably have the most footstep. Obviously, GT Ministries with the BBC documentaries, you guys with the massive fan base, with the sellout shows, the Facebook following. So I could see that also. Colin says, bring them all. Love to see a GTM versus a CCW Survivor Series match. Oh, boy. I mean, that would be something. I mean, you think about Royal Rumble weekend coming up here. Forget about that. If there was a GT Ministry CCW Survivor Series elimination match, I mean, just think about the scenarios. That would be a dream match in UK professional wrestling. I mean, just think about who could be on that roster. I mean, I'd even argue Dustin Hart couldn't be on that roster because he doesn't have a contract right now in CCW. I mean, that's kind of the most fascinating part. And I think Hybrid has basically said, give me Disciple. So if Hybrid hangs on this Saturday against Mad Max Cooper, I mean, listen, I've said it before, champion for champion. And I mean, Disciple is going on the record and said that he's the belt collector. He's collecting more belts, and the way he's going about things right now with the Descendants now he's got this wrecking crew he talks about, and we're going to see him next weekend against the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera. Tommy Dillon again the following weekend at Nonstop Action Wrestling's Fatal Attraction. I mean, that would certainly be a really, really intriguing match. And also, Casey Jack Bradley says, love GTM. It's my home. CCW is a place I would love to go to as well. GT Ministries has something to say about this. Like CCW, our heart is in the right place. Our talent are in it 1,000%, and our fans see that. The culture has been set by those in the background and those who make things tick. When the culture is right, everything else flows from. I want to follow this up in a different way. And I want to tie this into a general point about you guys, and I could make the same point about GT Ministries, because GT Ministries just does a phenomenal job. I want everybody to follow GT Ministries, please. GT Ministries UK on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that great stuff. And Cutlery Championship Wrestling, please join their group on Facebook as well, over 4,000 members strong. But I feel like there's something special with what you guys have had the past 16 or 17 months and what the foundation has been in GT Ministries, where you have two locker rooms where people work together for the common cause. You have a locker room in both places that doesn't judge people. You have a locker room where people are motivated to go to each show because they know that the fans are so invested into it. You guys sell it after sell out. The last GT Ministry show, Descendant of the Snake, I think I've never seen a fan base as loud that I saw at that show in the 2 years I'm covering pro wrestling here on Sportswire Radio and our scene. So when I think about what the environments that have been set by you two companies, what you guys have done, I really think every company should aspire to have what you guys have. I mean, talk to me about that comment and some of the things I've just said, and what does that mean to you? And I think to the locker room in CCW, and maybe even both locker rooms.
It's very humbling, because we have been through a lot of bumps in the road, if you like. And
I know we had it here. Listen, with Mr. Barris himself had to come on here and to address certain things because, and I'll say it up here right off the bat, there were certain wrestlers, there were certain personalities, commentators, and other promotions who said, I should walk back talking about CCW. But I believe in loyalty. I believe in standing with the people that supported you. And I said, no, siree. And there's certain people that since that moment, I don't want to name names, I have actually said it on the air, they're never coming back to Sportswire Radio, or if at all. I want to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, like every new thing, it hits bumps, speed bumps, and obstacles and stuff. But I think the thing which drives us more is because in the area that we're in, there's very limited support for us from other promotions. And now they don't call me Taylor Truth for nothing, because I'll be honest with you, I don't candy floss anything. I don't hold anything back. And as I am on character and person, I'm exactly the same. And let's be honest, the scene that we are surrounded by are so toxic. They have some valid points, which we've learned from.
Yep.
We've learned some valuable lessons, and we've definitely progressed into bigger and better things. I mean, in 2020, who would have thought that what was just an idea amongst a few friends to put together such a promotion that has built up a snowball effect of fans? It's bringing talent from all over the other parts of the country. I mean, the country, part of the country that it represents, don't want to know, which is fine. We're happy with that. We're totally happy with that. But to go from what we started with to now, it is just literally walking beyond that curtain every show and seeing the fans go wild. It makes it all worthwhile. And sitting in the GTM crowd, the feeling was exactly the same. Everybody there to watch a good show with no drama, no hatred, and literally have a good night. And if everyone can leave a show, it doesn't matter whether it's CCW, whether it's GT Ministries, if they can leave a show and we've made an impression and made them believe that they can do anything they want to do, then I think we've won.
Absolutely, and I think that the wrestling fans have won because we have two great companies that we get to see. And GT Ministries management basically says what I just said on the air, which was basically we were asked not to feature the CCW Tag Team Champs at that time, but we did because we believed in the talent. And that's basically what I'm telling you. There were wrestlers, there were commentators that said to me, listen, don't cover CCW. You know, they did something and, you know, you don't really want to be involved in it. And I said, you know what? I believe in the people. I believe in what they're trying to do. They have a massive fan base, just like GT Ministries. There's people that kind of say, oh, GT Ministries, you know, they have this and they have that. But I believe in the vision of people. I believe in the message of positivity in terms of what professional wrestling does. And I think that these are the two companies that really, to me, in my opinion, at least humbly, as the host of the Sports Report and the man behind Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, have set the gold standard and what I think wrestling companies should be like, and that's across the board here. So, and Hybrid says, where are those wrestlers now, retired or irrelevant? Well, the last part would be irrelevant. Also, but let's go back to some other things. I want to talk about Hybrid in a second because he has been a target of other wrestlers that have come on here on Sportswire Radio. So I want to talk about that in a couple of different ways. Dustin Hart is with us. Good evening. Prince Dagan, our Light in the Dark champion, which we'll mention as well in a little bit. But Hybrid is going to be in action. Also, another part of the rematches here on Sportswire Radio, covering here CCW's Fighter Strike 2, is against Mad Max Cooper. And as I know you heard, we had Hammerhead Smith on last week, who was the former champion, and that was obviously kind of an interesting situation how he lost the title, as you might want to call it. And he had a number of things to say about Hybrid. A number of different wrestlers have mentioned Hybrid over the past few years because obviously he won the title most recently. And I mean, what do you expect here coming up here when it comes to this match here Saturday, and some of the comments maybe made by wrestlers, and especially Hammerhead Smith, where he really hasn't been impressed with what Hybrid's ring ability is, and he feels like once he gets back to the mountain and he gets it, whatever comes away with this title, whether it's Mad Max Cooper, again the former champion for, how many minutes was he the champion? And Hybrid, that well, I was gonna say he was certainly in that Miz Yokozuna territory, and Sting I think was champion for like 45 minutes on a Nitro. I mean, there's a number of different examples, but I mean, certainly Hammerhead Smith wants that championship one way or another. And I mean, what was your impressions on some of those comments and what we can expect coming up here Saturday night in the main event of Fighter Strike 2 for the Underground Championship between Hybrid and Mad Max Cooper?
Well, you see, when you win a title of such magnitude, it comes with a natural target on your back. So I think Hybrid is brave enough, he's big enough to defend that with honor and all the other things that come along with being a good champion. Now, Hammerhead Smith never lost the title.
Yep.
We'll give him that.
He spoke a lot about that with us, as I'm sure you saw last week.
Absolutely. About that. And Hammerhead Smith has a certain way of doing things, which, you know, look, I'm not going to sit here not knowing anything else about wrestling other than my own experience and what I've witnessed at CCW. Okay. Hammerhead Smith has every right to brag about what he can and can't do in the ring. He has every right to criticize everybody else, as does everyone else have the right to criticize him. So my advice to Hammerhead Smith would be, focus on your own game. If you can win the Rumble and earn yourself that championship title rematch, that technically you do deserve the rematch. However, earn it. If you are criticizing other people about earning their stripes in this business, lace up your boots, get in the Rumble, and prove it.
Okay, well, we did see him back when it came to the Rumble, when we saw that Hybrid had won the Rumble and he had eliminated Mitch Taylor, who we actually had on here. But, I mean, there is a point, though, and I'm not going to talk about Hammerhead Smith, what he's done outside of CCW, but there is almost, I guess, maybe in a way, there is a bitterness that all those months have gone by, and I mean, he's seen other champions that we've had here that have held the title, and Chris Onyx, he's teaming with another former champion and the most recent champion before this whole situation. I know some certainly had their opinions of, but I mean, he felt also when it came to the actual promotion of CCW and, let's say, the seriousness of holding that title, he is not impressed, I guess, and he feels that he should jump to the back of the line because he never lost the title.
I mean, again, he's entitled to his opinion, as everybody else is. But in the same vein, what I would say is, you should never have went. So it's one of those things. If you didn't go, I honestly firmly believe if he didn't go, when he did go, he would possibly still be champion.
I agree with you. I actually agree with you on that.
He was a strong champion. He would have been a strong champion.
And if you think about it, listen, what he did after losing the title, I mean, not that long afterwards, he was in a match with the Billington Bulldogs. For those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, they're the offspring of the family of the Dynamite Kid and the British Bulldog. I mean, they're right now in Major League Wrestling. Court Bauer, I was listening to a show, talked about the impact on signing the Billington Bulldogs. So, I mean, Hammerhead Smith speaks for himself. He very well could still be the champion because he would have never lost it. I mean, there is a point there that I would have to agree with.
Yeah, I mean, when times go on, and unfortunately, these things don't lay dormant for you. The belt has moved on to other people.
Sure, I understand.
It's been earned. So Hammerhead now needs to do what somebody who's viable for a championship should do and get himself back in the frame.
Absolutely. No question that there is a point to be made on that as well. And also, again, the point could be made, well, the promotion of CCW could have went up further because maybe was Hammerhead Smith the champion when he was going to wrestle the Billington Bulldogs? Would he have done more things with it? I don't know. I'll never know that question. Nobody will never know that answer. I'll ask you one more question on that. And I know you wouldn't give me the answer. You wouldn't know the answer on this, but do you feel like that situation could have been handled differently? Is there a lot of what ifs there, or it's kind of hard to say because it's a situation that only very few people are going to know? That's Hammerhead Smith and obviously Mr. Barris himself.
I think, to be honest, it would probably be a conversation to be had with them. I wouldn't get involved in those forms of politics.
Totally understand.
If I can help it anyway.
And obviously, listen, unfortunately, we've seen that in wrestling where politics in a championship can certainly play at hand. And it's always disappointing because the real losers is we, the fans. We're the losers in that because we would have never known what could have happened. You know, we just never would have known here. And Hybrid does have a comment here. The landscape of CCW has changed. The competition is tougher. Maybe Hammerhead just can't hang at the top anymore. Well, I'll tell you, we're going to find out. And do you expect, I would have to imagine then, that Hybrid is expected to retain against Mad Max Cooper? I mean, Mad Max Cooper is going to be a very, very tough out. I know that he's going to want to put Hybrid in a submission there, which we kind of spoke about last week. I mean, what's your feelings on Saturday, what we can expect here if Hybrid can hang on to the title?
Well, you can definitely expect him to retain the title. I mean, Max Cooper, no disrespect. In fact, yeah, all the disrespect in the world intended. And all the other things. And many, many moons ago in the early days, he actually did choke me out with these Highland chokes. So I know what he's capable of. But no, again, I go back to my first entry into a Rumble. I did say, and I continue to say this, with Rumbles, you don't have to be very good at this game. You've just got to know when to strike, and you've got to be very, very fast to do it. Now, Cooper, he did. He 100% used intelligence, and I applaud him for that. Absolutely applaud him for that, because anybody else in his position would have done exactly the same thing. The only difference is when you put yourself on a pedestal with a target, such as a belt, you unfortunately are on the radar for people who have opportunities. Now, Hybrid, at that point, had an opportunity, and he cashed in that opportunity, and now we have our current champion. And Hybrid, as I said earlier, will hold on to this belt, and he's fully aware of that target that is on his back. And I told the CWO months ago, if they didn't pull the socks up, they would forever be laughed at, they would forever be mocked. And now look, 3 belts within one faction.
I'm going to ask you about that in a second. But I have to ask to be objective because there are people out there, and Prince Dagan had brought this up through translation when Hybrid was on last week. Did you agree with how Hybrid had used the lantern there at that moment? Was that something, because some do feel that, and Hammerhead Smith also expressed that as well, that it was kind of a tacky way to do it to win the championship, and he got somebody right after they were down and just won the title, and some would also say that they took away from their moment. That's a special moment to win a prize championship like the one that we have here in CCW. What would you say to some of those people that have said that?
On the battlefield, there are no friends. And unfortunately, to make an omelette, you've got to crack a few eggs. And if that means you have to play dirty like everybody else has played dirty for however long in the CWO played by all of the rules all of the time, got walked all over. In fact, the CWO derives from the Undergrounders, which is where this whole began. We've always been trod on. We've always been, pushed to the back of the line. And when Barris, this is going slightly off topic, stabbed Dustin in the back.
I was going to come back to that. Go ahead.
This is point and example of an element of people constantly being trod on that eventually say, actually, we've had a damn enough of being treated this way, and we're going to play the game exactly how those people play it. And they don't like it now. It's salt in the mouths. They'll get over it, I'm sure.
Okay, well, we'll certainly find out as we are here on Sportswire Radio with the man who speaks the truth, you might say. We are finding out if we can handle the truth, and his name is Taylor Truth, and my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am the man behind Sportswire Radio, also the host of the Sports Report. And if you like what you hear from us, continue to give us support on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, YouTube at Sportswire Radio, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player, and we'll have more wrestling coverage tomorrow in this spot with Wildfire Nate Reese of the LWF. They have their own show, which will also take place this Saturday. It will be certainly, I'm sure, pale in comparison with the CCW show Fighter Strike 2, but Nate Reese will give us his thoughts on that card, plus much, much more. And I also want to thank everybody that has continued to support Sportswire Radio, because we are now over 500 followers. We're also well over 100 subscribers on YouTube now. And also, we are in our 4-year anniversary this week of me doing this, whether it's the Sports Report or Sportswire Radio. So I want to thank everybody for all of their continued support. Everybody also on the CCW page that is joined in, as I want to thank, obviously, everybody there that has shared it. So we are here with Taylor Truth and all the things that he is doing, and we'll find out if we can handle the truth. Casey Jack Bradley says, I've only seen a few CCW shows online, and I would love to go see it in person and meet the wrestlers someday and even compete. I have a few wrestlers I would love to face someday. I appreciate that. Also, good evening here from this individual. I believe we know who that is, but I always like to say, I always like to never try to break anybody's character or who they are, because I always do believe in that. Some people say, just announce who they are, but I do want to talk about this whole situation here with the CWO in a second, because you touched upon it, this whole battle with James Barris here. We saw how the last show ended, and James Barris's mother basically gave him the runaround, is famously, Sammy Hagar famously sang with Eddie Van Halen on a Van Halen song at one time. But the CWO right now kind of are the rulers of CCW at the moment. For all of 2022 and most of it, it was top tier, whether it was whatever the incarnations. It was Onyx or Hammerhead Smith, the Working Class Militia. Obviously, Uncle Ralph at one point, but certainly now it's the CWO. And I have said this. I said this to Dustin. I'm sure you caught that. And I said this to Hybrid last week. I think in a lot of ways, this is a really, really huge weekend for the CWO that's going to set the tables here for what not only you guys do in 2023, but I really think kind of the state of CCW going forward here throughout this year, because obviously the tag titles and the world title are going to be defended here. So talk to me if you feel like that this is a make or break weekend coming up here with these titles in line and rematches ahead for the people that the CWO took these titles from. So, I mean, give me your thoughts on if this is a make or break weekend here for the CWO in 2023.
I think I'm a very realistic person, and despite the support they have from me, it is absolutely make or break. They've made a statement at the very end of last year, very, very bold statement that we are here. We are no longer going to be pushed around and pushed under the mat. And now it's about walking the walk, as we've done enough talking. And to be honest, I've got full faith that the guys are going to pull this out of the bag. I don't doubt them. I just, like I say, the only problem that you have with these sorts of situations is people will play dirty. People will scratch and claw their way to get what they want, and they're entitled to do that. I would not be one to criticise that. As like I say, we've come under scrutiny in the past also. I don't think we're going to lose anything. However, I'll be watching with very, very keen eyes, and I will be prepared to do anything to stop them from losing those belts.
All right, well, let me ask you this question, and I'm going to ask this to you because obviously you're a part of the CWO and you're not going to be in the ring, but you have a vested interest. If, let's say, one or the other retains the title, but the other loses, is that a successful weekend still for the CWO, or is it basically we have to retain the titles or it's bust?
Well, there will be tears the next day. There will be work to be done, and actually, you could pull into play the fact that they've bitten off more than they can chew too early. Hybrid would be the one who I would hope is listening right now, and that his title is of a lot of value.
Absolutely,
It's the
that's
top
the
of
big
the
one.
mountain, and he on his own can lose that belt, whereas Dustin and Rob have each other, so that makes it a bit easier for them to retain. However, that being said, I actually am in action on Saturday night. I'll be entering the Colliery Rumble.
Oh boy! Okay, so you're actually there's a vested interest here for you as well, I believe. Then
absolutely, and I'll be honest, I made a statement on my show the other night. If I win that Rumble, I'll be going straight for the Light in the Dark Championship. Come hella high water. If we still retain 3 belts, we want that one in our ranks as well.
Now let's talk about that for a second, because I'll come back to the hybrid comment. That was interesting. But Prince Dagan, who was here a few minutes ago, says Taylor, and he gives an emoji to both of us. But we saw what happened with hybrid and Prince Dagan at the last show for the Colory Christmas Carol, and we saw that the whole interference there. And I mean, so the goal then basically is for world dominance in CCW. That's why you want to enter that Rumble. You want to basically win it and declare your shot at the Light and the Dark Championship. So give me the mindset on this, and if you think you could beat the current Light and the Dark champion, Prince Dagan.
Well, so there's the interesting point. So I'm not going in that alone. So we'll have Blizzard, who's a member of the CWO,
yes,
and KT Gold in that match, Rob Bagwell's son.
Yes.
So there's 3 opportunities in this Rumble for us to secure a title shot. Now, it doesn't have to be for Light in the Dark. It could be anything. It could be an insurance policy for if something was to go wrong on Saturday night.
Interesting. So you'd even sacrifice yourself, long as the whole goal is for the CWO to get a shot at that Light in the Dark championship. That's pretty much what you're telling me here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. And Hybrid has said here, watch out for Taylor in the Rumble. I may be the pit bull of the CWO, but he's the deer stalker. My guy can really throw down. You got this, bro. All right, so you know what? Let's talk about the Rumble for a few minutes, because I want to spend time on that, because we also have some guests most recently and some friends of Sportswire Radio from different places that are going to be in this Rumble. So, I mean, don't tell me how you're going to win this. Don't tell me how the CWO is going to win this, but you've got Blizzard, you've got KT Gold, you've got yourself. Is there sort of a scenario or a game plan that you've got in your mind on how you're going to be successful in this, or is there a certain strategy? You know, you always think about Rumbles, and there is a point that Hybrid makes that, you know, there's a certain strategy about going about winning a Rumble. A Rumble is not the same as winning a match 1, 2, 3. There's a whole number of different things can happen. We saw Randy Orton one year pretty much hide under the apron and won the Royal Rumble. I mean, we've seen a whole number of different things that can happen in a Royal Rumble. I mean, Vince McMahon was number 2, I think, in 1999, and he wound up winning the Royal Rumble. Number 1, he was number 1, and Stone Cold was number 2. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that go in hand here in a Rumble. So, without giving it away here, do you, in your mind, have a certain strategy or a certain way that maybe you and the brethren in the CWO are going to pull this off?
I'll be honest, I think just like everybody else that's going into this, I don't think there's anything I could say that would give it away. I'm just going to go in there like I did in December at that Rumble. I'm going to go in there, and everything that moves and everything that gets in my way is going to become a target for me, and they're going to go over the top rope one way or the other. Teamwork could be important, but we never know how long we may get the opportunity to be there. I mean, there's some amazing talent, both old and new, in this Rumble. And I would be a fool to sit here and say that I am going to win and this, that, and that. I'm going to go in there with one intention to win. And by all stretch of imagination, I'm not going to be the toughest guy in there or girl. You just never know. But I'm going to go in there with the strong will that I have a point to prove, that I'm not just the ring announcer that stands along the side. I'm not just a member of the CWO that does all the talking. In fact, when the hat comes off, the fists come up, and that's it. The rest's history.
I would definitely not want to get in your way when it comes to the hat being taken off and those fists come up because you are a big guy regardless. So I'll definitely give you that much. And I guess the one defense I would say from anybody here in the CW or in CCW is that we've seen some battle royals and rumbles here, quite a bit in CCW of late. So there is some experience here where in other places, you have a rumble, whether it's the Royal Rumble or some other places that are going to have a rumble coming up here in the UK the next 2 weeks that they haven't had a rumble until the year prior or every year, once a year. But here we've seen a few of them. But let me ask you another question, and I want to come back to Dustin Hart in a second with this whole issue without the contract. And I do want to come back to that, but I want to talk about here this whole situation now when we're seeing other wrestlers from other companies coming into this here. And for example, we have here Dan Robertson, who was on Tuesday. He's with Nonstop Action Wrestling. Seen him in Blackheart Wrestling, GT Ministries. He actually got himself from here on Sportswire Radio a segment with Gareth Angel, which wound up the then champion of GT Ministries, Jack Johnson, was kind of a part of. We also have here Remus Kane, who's also a part of Nonstop Action Wrestling. Also, we've seen him in UKW, a number of different places, and there are other wrestlers, I'm sure, from other promotions that are going to be in this Rumble. So we've heard a number of different people that said, you know what, I'm coming into CCW and I'm taking this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And that kind of starts with the declaration here coming up this Saturday here in this Rumble to get that crack at whatever championship that they may desire. And do you and maybe others in CCW feel a certain motivation to kind of maybe knock off these, how can I put it in a nice way, outsiders, interlopers that have come in here and talked a lot about CCW, or maybe they've made a name off what you guys have built?
I think there's probably mixed feelings, but what I can say from conversations I've had with various people, everybody's very excited to see new faces. And actually, there's nothing more rejuvenating than some new talent to get in and amongst. And I've seen some of these guys wrestle, Remus Kane being one in particular.
Remus Kane's been around for a while, yep.
Very, very talented individual. And I think everybody's very, very happy that we're getting some new faces to throw around. And to be thrown around by, because that's what it's all about. And this is the thing when it comes to opening doors for new faces to come and test themselves. It's a different landscape to what they've been used to. CCW shows from start to finish are generally very loud, and I can speak from experience. I've announced some matches, Dustin Hart and Ronnie. That match, I couldn't hear myself think. The crowd were that on fire. And it's this sort of thing that on the night can have all the difference.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the crowd will play a big difference here because that crowd, for a lot of these newer wrestlers that are coming in, whether it's Nonstop Action Wrestling, UKW, whether it's any other place, I would have to think it is going to be different with that crowd because that crowd in CCW, it's going to feel like a crowd that's probably going to be in the thousands because that 200 people in that building, if you haven't watched the CCW show, I highly encourage you to do so. Those crowds are loud. It's going to feel big there. You're going to be on a big stage. I know for some 200 plus 250 people is not a lot of people. No, it is. Trust me, it's a lot of people because you're going to feel it in that building there. But I also then want to follow up what you just said, and I will come back to Dustin, but I do think you're right on one thing. It is good for professional wrestling, especially here in the UK, that other companies do work with each other. We touched upon it with GT Ministries, the relationship that GT Ministries and CCW has fostered over the past year. I do think that other companies exchanging talent and talking with each other and not ignoring each other and acknowledging that we exist is ultimately good for professional wrestling. I think everybody wins. And as I said before, the fans most importantly win. And I kind of think this Saturday, in a lot of ways, kind of sets the tone for that. So you might be right then, Taylor, in the fact that it's a win for all people because the more talent that they have to work in different places and do different things and see who's the best, maybe that's the whole goal at the end of the day. You might be right.
Yeah, I mean, in recent shows, we've been so privileged to have talent come from Arcadian Wrestling, who are relatively local, and they've gave
Friday show tomorrow.
They've gave a hybrid. They've gave the likes of Persona. These guys are young and hungry for action, and they're gonna get amongst this this title chase or any form of in-ring debut they can. So people that are coming from other parts of the UK, absolutely, hit CCW up. If you want a change of scenery and you want to be, I mean, to be honest, hometown crowds with hometown talent get a lot of cheers. But unfortunately, for the ones who are from out of the area, until they fully know you, they're going to hate you. They're going to boo you. They're going to scream you, whether you face or heel. Hammerhead Smith just has to walk out of the curtain before he even speaks, and the place is up in arms.
Well, I could listen. I respect Hammerhead a lot, but I could see that when Hammerhead comes out of that curtain there Saturday in his match with Chris Onyx and against Palmer and Ulfric Winterwolf, I mean, he's gonna definitely not hear too many cheers. He's gonna be pretty much to a chorus of boos, literally a chorus of boos. I want to give a mention to Arcadian Wrestling because they have a show tomorrow as well. I think Colin had mentioned that at the very beginning, so I want to acknowledge Arcadian Wrestling and Arcadian. They're so cool because they have their shows. It almost looks like, for those here in New York and America, like high school looking gyms. They have like these really like big size places, which I know for some wrestlers could work both ways. So I kind of think that's pretty cool. And I want to give a shout out to Sunday's guest here coming up. That is Adam Morgan. He says, "Woo, a round of fisticuffs." And thank you, Adam, because you actually got me out of going to a meeting somewhere Sunday. So actually, I just realized, like, somebody had asked me, "You want to meet up somewhere in Manhattan?" And I actually was like, "I can't do it. I'm out of pocket." And thankfully, we have an interview scheduled. That was kind of, I didn't want to say it to the person without saying it, but that was kind of my reason. And the gentleman thug Ronnie Thatcher says, "It's a hate relationship with me and the fans. They love me and I hate them." I want to bring up Ronnie in a second, and I promise I come back to CW. But there's so many people I really want to get to. But I want to talk about Carnage Championship Wrestling, and obviously Ronnie starting up that's going to be something we're going to see throughout the year. It's almost like, as Ronnie described, it's like our SmackDown to CCW's Raw. Talk to me about Carnage Championship Wrestling and what your expectations are from that, and I think how positive this is for CCW as a whole.
Well, I think it's a step into a ring that we've been pushed to, actually, because I don't think there was an intention for this to ever become a thing, but the world press and the ones who wanted to share it left, right, and center have made it quite a success. So to them, we thank them incredibly much.
Hey, listen, Vince McMahon would always say any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, listen, I mean, controversy creates cash, they say. I mean, if Eric Bischoff is not wrong when he says that. Absolutely. Carnage is going to be an adult version of what we already have. It's going to be from start to finish. It's going to be fast action. It's going to be carnage. It's going to be hardcore. And it's going to ramp up to an absolute extreme towards the end of the night. It's not going to be deathmatch wrestling to any stretch of the imagination. In terms of those of you who want to come and say people get their legs chainsawed off, it's not going to be like that. But it's going to be very, very entertaining. And I would tell everybody who watches this back, pop across, follow Carnage Championship Wrestling. Ronnie's got some great... I mean, me and Ronnie have never really seen eye to eye. I mean, I did referee the very first championship match at CCW ever had. Was with him and another guy. Unfortunately, he won. So there we go.
Absolutely. And the gentleman thug Ronnie Thatcher has chimed in. He's telling me I should interview Miss Dame Flaps. Well, certainly, yes. There's a lot of people I've got to speak with. I can tell you that
we're on. She's not PG.
Well, we are a little bit of a family station on Sportswire. The only reason I do say that because I do have certain people come on, whether they're like, how can I put it here for those in the UK, like university sports, like whether it's coaches, whether it's players, and sometimes they look at this stuff and you have almost like you're walking line, but we'll figure it out. Listen, we'll definitely figure it out. There's a lot of people we have on coming up. I can promise you it's a who's who of people, and we'll definitely add that to the list, as Chris Jericho used to have a list. So that and one of his incarnations. So I can promise you that'll be something that we'll keep in mind. I want to give a big plug though to Carnage Championship Wrestling, and I've heard through the grapevine there's some big things coming in the pikes for Carnage Wrestling talent. I don't want to tip my hand, but I've heard a lot of great things, and we're very excited to cover it here on Sportswire Radio. So that I can promise you that's something. But I want to talk to you about Dustin Hart again, because I find this so fascinating, and I had asked Dustin this question, and I had asked Hybrid this question, but he's only been to CW and CCW for a little short time here, but how has he done this where he's a champion here? he still doesn't have a contract. I mean, I was trying to rack my brain through this situation. I don't think I've ever heard of an instance here, Taylor, that I've seen a wrestler who's a current champion, who's been a huge part of things in this company, who actually doesn't work for the company he's representing. I mean, tell us. You're the one that tells the truth. You're the one that's got to give us the truth here. So how has this all worked here with Dustin Hart without a contract in CCW, but yet he's one half of the tag team champions?
Well, I think the truth of the matter is the person who gives up the contract clearly needs his head looked at by somebody more qualified than me and you. But why would Dustin Hart need to battle for a contract now after he's achieved so much? Yet it's constantly made an issue of by those who want to trot on you, should be like. Because Dustin Hart, when I first watched CCW going back to 2020, was a bit of a smoke and mirrors character. He would appear and disappear like the mist, and you would only ever hear and see from him on very rare occasions. And then when obviously things became, well, he was the underdog. He was fighting against the establishment, and that was the whole purpose of his character. And still to this day, he'll forever be that person. He doesn't need a contract to prove anything. I think he's already proved what he can do. The man's extremely talented. He's got thousands of brain notches of wisdom to pass on. And Hybrid, young and up-and-coming talent, partnered with the likes of Rob Bagwell and Dustin Hart and Blizzard. That lad has got nothing but the stars ahead of him.
You've been kind of, in some ways, the brains of the CWO, and I have a few more comments. I'll get to them in a second, but how have you been so intricate in the CWO's success here of late?
Because when I found out who was in charge, and they said to me after we lost the Survivor Series style event that we had, we were eliminated. Once we lost that, it was make or break. It was either pull your socks up, do something worth doing, or it's all going to go. I was tagging along with a bunch of guys who were. I mean, Dustin didn't lose anything. That's the thing. That's a key point to note. Dustin, his loss record is good. He hasn't lost much. However, the things that he needed to have won, the things that make statements, such as that Survivor elimination style event that we had, we needed that, and we didn't get it. So I had to then turn up a notch and stop being the smooth talker, if you like, and tell them some truths that did hurt. And I think actually it did the job, because come December, everybody pulled the socks up and everybody had gone in there and done what they needed to do and walked out with some gold. So whether it's brains, I don't know. Whether it's just sheer venom tongue, possibly it's that more than anything else. But they got told what they need to do and they did it. So mission accomplished.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, compared to some of the other groups here, whether it's the Elite or Top Tier in the past or Pandemus, I mean, the CWO right now, I mean, they have the momentum. We'll see if they keep the momentum here. And I know we'll definitely recap this on Sportswire Radio in the coming weeks, because I will say we've had on Hybrid already twice. And I kind of see Hybrid going in almost into that territory of like an RP Davis or a Disciple right now, champions I think of in other places where they've got a certain background about them, a certain vibe to them. And obviously Hybrid, with the background that he's had, obviously being a former cage fighter, doing the MMA thing, and now transitioning it into wrestling, reminds me a little bit in some ways of like an RPD. I mean, certainly I think Hybrid's going to get more match time and he's going to certainly get more experience in there. But I think in terms of what he's going to develop, and I kind of see a lot of similarities there. Ronnie Thatcher, the Gentleman Thug, says, thank you. And if anyone who is over the age of 18 joined the group CCW Carnage Championship Wrestling. And this individual, I think you might want to get a note of, says, now then. So I think this individual you may or may not know of. And he says here.
I do.
Yep. Anything you want to say to this individual coming on here that is popped up?
He needs to brush his hair.
Well, I'm not one to talk, right? Because I've got too much hair, as some might say.
Fashionable stay. His isn't. No.
Well, I guess. All right, so that's. I guess a kind of fair point. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll give you that much. And if you are on Facebook, I do want everybody to support Colory Championship Wrestling still, and it is Colory Championship Wrestling on Facebook. Please join the group. Over 4,000 members strong, and I've lost count on how many sellouts. And it's another sellout once again. And what's so great about CCW here, for those that are listening and watching, is we are here with Taylor Truth, and of course Taylor will be a part of Saturday's show, Fight or Strike 2, another sellout. Is that CCW shows like don't just sell out like the day before the show or it's match time. No, they sell out like weeks ahead of time. I think there was one of the shows we were promoting in the summer. It sold out like in 90 minutes or something like that. I'm like, wow. I mean, I don't even think bands sell out shows in like 80 or 90 minutes. I was reading about a band that had just toured for the first time in the U.S., and they were a legendary heavy metal band called Wasp, and they'd interviewed the singer and guitarist Blackie Lawless, and they asked him, you had 18 sellouts, but it was like he had to crawl to get to the 18 sellouts. It was like with CCW, you guys do it in like I said, 90 minutes from when these things are announced. So I have to ask the dumb question, which I know I'm going to get the answer from. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes with you. I mean, what is that like almost? And how is that almost kind of like made you and others in the company feel, knowing that you guys don't just sell out each show? You sell out in like I said, a day, 90 minutes sometimes, less than a week. I mean, this is really unheard of at this wrestling level. I mean, I promote shows all the time. I mean, I have the LWF on tomorrow, and in the LWF, if they sell out by match time, it's great. KOW, again, I hope I'm not getting into politics here, but I say this all lovingly. KOW, we had their last show for their 10th anniversary show. It was like their 10 years. It took them like literally until like that day or the day before just to sell out. A lot of these companies, it takes them time to sell out. You guys do it, and it's like yeoman's work. I mean, what's that like for you and everybody else in that locker room to be a part of that?
It's tremendous. It's a tremendous feeling. But what I will say is, it's still very nerve wracking, and I think everybody, you could. Yeah, we've had very good luck, and I say good luck. We haven't had good luck. It's the first few shows we thought we were lucky, and I think now that we're at this point where, even though we're confidently putting shows on, we still have this edge of nervousness about whether it's going to sell out or not. I mean, if it doesn't sell out, it doesn't sell out. You can't force people to buy them. But what we haven't probably done, which some promotions do this quite a lot, is when they want a busy crowd but they can't sell them, they'll throw them out, and we don't do that.
I know what that is. I know what the term is.
I think it's cheap, it's tacky, and I mean, if that's what promotions want to do, that's their business. But fortunately, we haven't been in that position. But what it does do is, every time we have a show, and I think everybody in the roster will agree, and the fans who probably tune in will probably also agree, it notches that bar up a little bit higher every single time. So with that comes more planning, comes more effort backstage. It comes in, performance has got to be spot on, because people are, if they come to the 15th and 16th show and it's absolutely terrible, and we haven't pulled out all the stops. I mean, there's questions to be asked. How are these guys selling out? That show was crap. It's about, constantly climbing this mountain. I mean, for us, it'll be a never-ending mountain.
No, because I think it's going to continue till it gets to the 99th, the 100th, the 101st, 102nd. Because I think it's never going to stop. Because what you guys do, you guys continue to put on great shows, and it's really that difficult. And I want to also give you guys a shout out, because there was a documentary. I think I quoted this before when it came to you guys. There was an old company. It was a Dark Side of the Ring. It was the UWF, I think it was. And they had famously Herb Adams, who was from New York here. And he was a very controversial promoter. And they had a brief deal. I think it was in ESPN here in America, which is kind of like Sky Sports, and a couple other like regional sports networks. And for whatever reason, this guy, he booked, I believe, the MGM Grand in Vegas. The guy pulled it off. I have no idea how he did it for this company that was really struggling. And he books this 17,000 seat arena. And I kid you not, the guy sold only 100 tickets. So you just never know. So the fact that, listen, even these companies that get booked in big venues, if you don't have the right support, the right fan base, the right matches, the right everything, it don't matter where you are. It could be Madison Square Garden. It could be Wembley. It could be the MGM Grand. It don't matter. You got to have the right formula, and we have that right formula here in CCW. Dustin Hart says, "It is a pleasure, and I am proud of our fans. They are the best fans, ever so supportive." I definitely agree that the CCW fans are a very special fan base. And again, I continue to say this. And I think the CCW fan base is better than some sports teams that I've covered here on Sportswire in terms of their fan base. I say that sincerely because they're so devoted, they're so loyal. Anytime we do anything CCW on Sportswire, people tune in left and right, and people always want to hear what we have to say. But I want to ask you a different question going into Saturday's show and kind of a grander scale. And I thought about this going in here to 2023. Who are some of the other wrestlers that maybe we haven't covered that we should keep an eye on here in CCW?
Most definitely, we should be keeping an eye on Palmer, the Necessary Evil.
We talked about him last week. Yep.
I mean, this guy, if you were to compare him to being an in-ring general, you would be absolutely correct. This guy has found, I mean, I'm not discrediting anybody else's knowledge, absolutely not. But this guy is a fountain of knowledge. In fact, if I was ever to need advice on anything that I needed to know about wrestling or going into an event, or if I was unsure, I would definitely hit up Palmer, the Necessary Evil. This guy is just absolutely tremendous. He's a sound gent. He's an absolute gent. He travels with his family to shows, and they are all brilliant people. But like everything else that CCW seems to harbour and keep, you know, it is what it is. The bread and butter of the whole thing is good people, and that's what makes it so impressive. And I think going back to the fan thing slightly, there's people who have been to CCW shows who don't even like wrestling. It's been happening in their area. They've seen a poster. They've bought a couple of tickets. They've brought the kids along, and that's it. We're set the touch paper on fire, and they come now to every single show. And it's that when you know you're doing something well, because actually they had no common interest in wrestling like me and you may have historical wrestling. You know, we've loved it for a while. But
absolutely. I've loved wrestling all my life. Absolutely.
These families don't know much about wrestling. In fact, some of the talent that trains through the CCW Academy don't even watch wrestling. You know, they've seen what we've done and they've wanted to get involved, and now they're putting on shows with us, and the likes of Palmer, Ulfric Winterwolf. These are guys to be watched. You know, fantastic. I mean, Ulfric Winterwolf, when he hits you with one of his moves, I mean, the whole ring bounces around. This guy he's colossal. He hits you with all of the Viking might that he has. So yeah, absolutely. The whole. You know, I say this every single show. The start of every single show, I'll tell everybody this is a stacked card, and I'll be fair. To be fair, it's always a stacked card now, and I feel like I'm just lying because I said that last show.
No. Listen, I watched the whole show because you guys actually streamed it on Facebook, and I was really happy for the first time I got to watch a full show. And legitimately, that whole show is stacked. It feels like almost like a WrestleMania at AEW or a StarCast show because it's like 3+ hours, but it's like every match is like, as Meltzer would say, 5 stars. Every match is like so intense. There's such a storyline. I think that's what you guys have such a difficult job in kind of being able to pull it off. And it's funny you said that about wrestlers and maybe those who are trained that really aren't fans of wrestling or fans that are kind of fans of CCW, maybe not fans of professional wrestling as a whole. I've actually gotten messages. This kind of ties back to GT Ministries in a second there. GT Ministries has the same thing. I've gotten messages from GT Ministries fans that have watched the streams when it comes to GT Ministries and said, you know what? I really enjoy what you had to say. And I would ask them about wrestling. And they're really not wrestling fans, but they're wrestling fans of GT Ministries, what they do in the Fountains Church in Bradford. It's kind of, I think, what you guys do out there in CM, you know, with you guys just having that massive fan base where they may not be WWE fans or AEW fans or any other fans, but they love what you guys do because you guys are that. And I think that's why it's so special that what we do on Sportswire and covering all these different companies, because I feel like, and I had met Reynaldo, who was the former LWF champion. And I had asked Ray this question. It'll tie into what you just said. And in the LWF, and they have a little bit of a following, not to the following you guys have, but they do have a following. They have great talent as well. I want to give them a lot of credit. But in these little towns, these wrestlers are kind of a big deal. You know, if you say you're an independent wrestler in New York City where I live, nobody gives a flying hoots. But in certain towns, that means something, whether it's in Morecambe, whether it's in Barrow, whether it's in Chorley, whether it's in Seaham, whether it's in Bradford, Jack Johnson in Salford, whether it's in Swinton. I mean, you go on, there are people might know them. I'm not saying they're going to be to the equivalent of Roman Reigns, but to certain wrestlers, these are the only wrestlers that these fans know of. So they are that. So that's why I think it's a really, really big deal with what you guys have been able to accomplish. That's why we love CCW here on Sportswire Radio. And I know we're coming late on time here, but I got to ask you a fun question. I mean, why do they call you the smooth talker?
I think, to be honest with you, I think it's a bit of a jip, to be fair, because I'm not very smooth. I'm very, to be honest.
Well, I think of smooth talkers. I think of Sade. I mean, this is no ordinary love. I'm a smooth operator. That's what I think of.
I'm very, very foul-mouthed. Normally.
Okay.
So so I think it's a hint of sarcasm that they call us the smooth talker. Because I'm actually not that smooth of a talker, really. But it kind of stuck, and I get. And funny enough, going back to what you said about small towns and stuff, I don't even live in Seaham, so I'm from Newcastle, which is just up the road.
Sure, I know Newcastle because on Sportswire we have a radio station, and we played podcast, and we used to play all the teams on the Premier League. So I know Newcastle and all those different teams. Yeah. So sure, I know it very well.
So, like I say, I'm not really from there. And I remember we'd only done 3 or 4 shows, I think it was. And I was in Morrison's, the shop there in Dalton Park, and standing at the self-serve till. And there was a guy who'd been served and walked around the back of the self-checkout. And he was just standing looking at us. And I thought, what the hell's he looking at? So I goes to the till, anyway, gets served. And as I'm walking around, he says, "Oh, you're that guy with the microphone, aren't you?" And for a minute, I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. I says, "What do you mean the microphone?" He was like, "From the wrestling." I says, "Oh, yeah, that's me." He was like, "Oh, yeah, that was a cracking show, that one. Will you be at the next one?" I says, yeah. Well, he says, "Well, I haven't got my tickets, but make sure you do because it will sell out if you don't." And yeah, so that sort of thing has happened. Obviously, not on the scale of Roman Reigns getting chased around car parks with cameras, but yeah, that was my little story there.
Hey, listen, I'm not surprised because I remember when I met Reynaldo when he came to New York, I asked him, "Oh, do people ever recognize you?" And he kind of said, "Yeah, once in a while people say, 'Oh, I've seen you,' or, yeah, I mean, I went to a show." So in these small towns, it does mean something. Because like I said, independent wrestling, like in certain places, like in New York, for example, nobody gives a flying, hoot. Nobody gives nobody gives fill in the blank. So it is kind of a big deal here. So that's kind of why I wanted to put out Anthony Finkel is giving me a big shout out. Yes, I'll definitely see him later on this evening. No question about that. But I also wanted to ask you, and before we get to closing thoughts, and I feel like I should have asked you this. I mean, how did you get into wrestling?
So I've always been a fan of the WWE. I didn't really watch anything of WCW, and I haven't watched anything of AEW or anything like that. But, so for me, I mean, I started watching it around about the time of the Attitude Era. So for when it comes to wrestling, I was always a big fan of the gimmicks and costumes. So yeah,
Goldust, Mankind, yep,
Goldust, Big Boss Man, by hands down one of my favorites. William Regal, he was also one of the favorites.
And how about the one, he was a man's man, he's a man. Remember that one when he first debuted in the WWF at the time? That was an interesting character.
And I just think it allowed me, to none of my other family liked it. I was the only person, so it was always just me watching. Then a couple of my friends would get involved. And then for a long time, I lost love of it. I really did. And I didn't really get the opportunity to be involved in anything. And then suddenly one day I was on Facebook, I think it was, and I came across a promo, and it was a promo it was a very grainy film thing of who I now know as Dustin Hart stood in a river up to his knees with a tunnel in the background talking about being the heart of the heritage. And I thought, what on earth is this? What is this? And I watched a few videos of other characters. Spike Braxton was another character that we had on at the time. And then suddenly they started doing these lives. It was called Dudes Mania. And it was Davey Dudes and James Barris. And
we know Davey Dudes, yeah.
It was the most unusual experience to watch on a Monday night. And then, I started participating in the lives. I'd put in the comments as I do for your show. And Max Cooper, he appeared on the show once, and I did a very good Scottish impression of him, saying, "I'm going to choke you out." that was it, really. And James got in touch, and we got talking, and then he said, "Oh, we're going to be running shows." And at this point, we're still heavily in lockdown.
I remember, I think when we had James the first time, he talked about that with that whole concept.
So we couldn't do anything show-wise. We did some cinematics. I mean, that raised a few eyebrows and upset a few people, but tough luck. And I didn't think would ever be a point where I'm sitting on Sportswire talking to you about now.
I don't know if we're that big, but I appreciate that.
I mean, I've literally done a bit of everything. I've done ring announcing. I've special guest refereed. I've been in a rumble. I've had yogurt thrown over us. And the future is bright, I guess. And actually, the wrestling has been a massive healing thing with me in terms of mental health and dealing with emotional stuff. And if I didn't have the wrestling distraction that I have now, I don't know where I would be. I've got a lot to thank this sort of thing for. So that's it, really. I mean, I don't really watch any mainstream wrestling now. I might watch the Rumbles because they're generally quite good.
Well, the Rumble's a big deal. The Rumble is it's almost to me like WrestleMania and the Rumble, like the Super Bowl, or like, let's say, the World Cup, almost kind of in that vibe for sports fans around the world. So I do kind of feel like that even if you're a casual mainstream wrestling fan, you kind of have some interest, or like, to a lesser extent, the Raw 30th anniversary show, at least the first hour. If you were like, you haven't watched anything up to date, I do think there is some importance to that. So, I mean, look, I definitely agree with you on the mental health. I've noticed a lot of wrestlers have come on and talked about that. And I do think that there is importance to just, having an outlet, having a place. And I'm glad that wrestling has done that in a large way for people. And, I know lockdown is also a big part of that. And, a lot of people, couldn't get over that, whether it's a loss of job, family situation. I mean, look, our situations definitely have changed, and the gentleman thug Ronnie Thatcher says you have also been kidnapped, Taylor.
Yeah, Ronnie Thatcher did kidnap me once upon a time.
Wow, that's interesting.
I mean, and this is why it's such a lovable thing, because we don't just put a ring up and put on 6 matches and that's it. No. There's a lot of work goes on to create what we have. In fact, I'll say this now, like, myself, I mean, Conor McGregor and I aren't the best of friends in any stretch of the imagination, but during lockdown, when nobody could do anything, we were putting on a show every night, a podcast about wrestling. We had The Truth Hurts on a Tuesday, we had Detention, Dudes Mania on a Monday, and then we had Canvas Chats and Turnbuckle Talks where we talk about wrestling stuff and this sort of thing. People would tune in the 20s and the 30s just because they couldn't do anything else, and it gave us 1 full year to create these people, so that when the first show went on, actually everybody knew Ronnie Thatcher, everybody knew Dustin Hart, everybody knew Ulfric Winterwolf, Mad Max Cooper. People knew who these characters were, and they could sit in that crowd on the first show, and they could relate to it, and it brought everybody together. And that's what's important. I think if your fans are going to come back time and time again, they can have a great time, but they can relate to the stories, they can relate to the people, and actually, at the end of it, they can make friends themselves. I think it's a positive thing.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. I mean, listen, I've been doing this for 4 years, and I obviously, like everybody else, we certainly places at different lockdowns, different situations. But I mean, listen, I was doing this for a long time, and I remember during lockdown with COVID, people would come on and do the podcast before I was doing it live, and people were like, "Well, this, can I please talk? Can I do something?" Because people had nothing to do. There was nothing to do, for several months. People couldn't go anywhere. People didn't want to meet. They were all freaked out, and I was on the air, whether it was covering at the time university athletics content or American, or then later on into 2 years ago doing UK wrestling coverage, because I got involved with Sportnarium, which became Sportswire Radio. And we had the UK side of things, and those guys at that time that were running Sportnarium wanted to start a UK radio station, and it wound up where I got the ball. And so certainly, look, I'm glad that people had an outlet, and I do want to get to a couple of comments before I get to closing thoughts from you. You did back me up and slap Carnage down the blast. Good memories. That's from Dustin Hart. Certainly, we definitely love Dustin, and want to give a shout out to my guy coming up here Saturday. That is the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, with a new picture here. I guess it's a new work picture. It says, "Good day, gentlemen. Hope you're doing well." The new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, will be on with myself and a number of different people from Sportzwire Radio, which will be Sunday morning, I guess now UK time, because we're going to have a post-Rumble reaction show. So I'm looking forward to doing that. It'll be on Facebook and Twitter and some other places. So looking forward to seeing the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, from Wrestling Championship Entertainment, which we have from the state of Wisconsin. We had coverage from them on Monday. And when I introduced you coming on, that was kind of one of the companies I had quoted. So love what Nicholas Crenson does. So we've spoke about a lot here. I know you're a very, very busy man getting ready for Saturday's show. So I want to give you the floor, Taylor, and anything you want to say, whether it's closing thoughts, anything else about CCW, any place that we can follow you and keep update with all the great things that you're doing, and whether it's Facebook, Twitter, and I really thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to having you on here throughout 2023 and more CCW coverage ahead, especially when it comes to the CWO. So I turn over to you, my friend, and the floor is yours.
So, well, the opportunity to be here is I'm honoured to be able to come on and share views and opinions and tell venomous truth. So I appreciate that. Close the thought. What I would just say is, doesn't matter whereabouts in the world you are, if you see something that you like, don't let anybody tell you not to. Don't listen to people who get in your ear and say, don't like them because they did this, or don't like her because she did that. To hell with that. You only get one life. Live it to the full. Enjoy everything you need to enjoy. In reference to CCW, we're always on the lookout for new faces, new talent. We definitely want to promote our women's division. So if you're
we have the wrestler, Dustin was there and kind of let a potential clue there. I mean, maybe that's the future in CCW there, which could be another forbidden door there opens a little bit.
We've got a vacant Pittsburgh Women's Championship that needs a title holder. So yeah, queue up, get yourselves here. Saturday, we're going to smash it. We're going to blow the roof off. Everybody's going to put in 110%. The CWO will retain everything they've got. I'll be drinking tea late into the night, watching the Rumble, and everybody will be happy. I don't know what else to say. I think I've covered most things.
That's a lot. No, we spoke about a lot tonight. We definitely did.
Big shout-outs to Arcadian. Big shout-outs to GTM, all the other local promotions that have supported me all over the UK.
Yep.
Like I say, you can follow me on Facebook. It's Taylor Truth. And I generally comment, drop us a follow. I'm always posting weird and wonderful things about with my dog, so that's always good. Tom, I think I don't want to drag it on. I think that's it.
No. Listen, we always listen.
We've done it all.
Some people, they go on in their closing thoughts, and others just say, you know what you kind of said. So no, totally. We appreciate that. And I definitely want to shout out Arcadian, big show tomorrow for them as well. Also, the CCW show coming up here this Saturday. Very, very excited about that. Also, GT Ministries want to shout out. Also, Nonstop Action Wrestling, who's done some work with CCW. I really want to signal out them because they've worked with us here, and I really, really support them. And obviously, they've worked very well with CCW. Also, Bolton Town Wrestling, want to give them a mention because they're also sort of working with CCW with the modern day mafia. So those companies especially, I really want to shout out for their friendships and breaking down that forbidden door. And my friend, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the CWO here does this weekend. We'll definitely talk about it undoubtedly on Sportswire Radio between now and next month's show. And don't be a stranger, and we'll definitely speak with you soon. And hopefully you give us another big show ahead in ring announcing, most especially Saturday night. And definitely look forward to the future, my friend. We definitely hoped that we could handle the truth here tonight.
Thank you very much for having us. It's appreciated.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we were here with Mr. Taylor Truth. They call the Smooth Talker. And one more shout out from C2K. C2K, you just missed the show. So C2K, of course, the legendary wrestling star from upstate New York. You can tune in from the very beginning, C2K, and check us out. We'll definitely get you on in the near and distant future. But Taylor Truth will be a part of the CCW Sold Out Fight or Strike 2. It's the I lost count how many sellouts it'll be this Saturday, and the CWO will have big matches ahead. We'll have the Rumble where the CWO will be a part of things. The Tag Team Championships will be defended by Rockstar Rob Bagwell and Dustin Hart against the Diamond Exchanges. Tommy Diamond, also Walker Wall Street. Also, we'll have on Hybrid for the Underground Heavyweight Championship and a rematch against the former champion Mad Max Cooper, plus much, much more. So please go to Colory Championship Wrestling on Facebook to join their group, Carnage Championship Wrestling. Shout out to the gentleman thug, Ronnie Thatcher. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I'm the host of the Sports Report and the owner of Sportswire Radio. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming. If you are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, I will be back tomorrow night with live coverage from the LWF as we get ready for the super show that they have coming up here, the Super Hesketh show with Wildfire Nate Reese. We'll get you ready for that card, plus much, much more. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in on the number one global radio station. Thank you, Taylor. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. Good night for now, everybody, here